Good morning and welcome to Is It Really Worth It podcast, working with FFP. We're here in North London this morning at the pub gym with the man, Radio Rahim. Good morning, Rahim.
Good morning. Good morning. We're in North London, but soon North Ireland. This is the promise that you made to
Northern
me.
Ireland.
So, yeah, we're starting here. When we do the season finale, we'll do it again.
We'll work our way over the water. So, let's start at the beginning. Where did it all start?
All started in Oakland, California, Western America, the West Coast in California.
Andre Ward land.
That's right. That's right. And so, there is an Andre Ward, but there wasn't a huge boxing culture in the Bay Area, at least not that I was aware of growing up. So coming from the Bay Area, which is more known like the Berkeley, San Francisco vibes of hippies and free love and liberalism and really the home of the 60s hippie movement. And my parents obviously are from that era. So that's kind of the environment I grew up in. A lot of revolutionary, militant, black speak and culture and community, and a lot of very free, kind of multicultural atmosphere. And so the reason I bring that up is because when I think of like my roots and what really kind of set my worldview, it was that there's a idea of community and an idea of oneness about people and around the world and religions and cultures and all. But then there's also a very kind of militant, revolutionary, counter-government approach to how you live your life, which is how we designed our freedom, right? So, very different from maybe the experience of the English and even the Black English is a unique kind of worldview. And my mother, was a real blessing in that she had a global perspective and was like interested in world travel and exposing me to not just the American way of looking at the world, but actually experiencing the world firsthand outside of America. So that gave me also an opportunity to understand people a different way. I went to a Chinese preschool. And when I mean Chinese, it was Chinese language, Chinese children. And my mother sent me there as like the only Black kid in the whole school. And that was kind of like the beginning of her way of raising me. You couldn't think of a more fish out of water experience, but when you're in preschool, everybody's kids,
you're all the same.
You're not burdened with your parents' prejudices and differences. It's just like, we're all kids. And that's a pretty early memory, but I do have like a foggy kind of memory of this schoolyard of Chinese kids and having friendships outside of our immediate community. And I think that kind of foundational, what they call core memories, is something that's carried through till this day.
Brilliant. You learned to speak Chinese?
When I was at that age, I was able to communicate with the kids. Now, that is something that I really could have kept up with. But I only went to the Chinese school for that one preschool year. If I had kept up with that, then that would have been amazing. But not anymore.
So, from preschool, where did the education go?
I mean, I was born and raised in California, in Oakland, Bay Area. So I went from that school to I didn't go to the same school for 2 years in a row until I was in high school. Because every year my mother thought that there was a better school or a different school, or, we moved to this place and this school is the best. So she was, we were education shopping every year.
Which is a good thing, which is a great thing.
What it did was make me able to make fast friends. And also, in an odd way, a real asset later in life as an adult, we all learn is you have to learn how to separate from people also. You got to know who to take with you, who to keep in your life, and be able to adjust to change and lose certain people. So that's a difficult thing you would imagine for a kid, constantly every year having to make a new friend group, having to leave behind the friends of the year before. But then that became another thing that I'm really able to do. Like I move around the world now seamlessly. I can be in any country. I don't care what language they speak, what the culture is. If it's something that like speaks to my spirit and I'm enjoying myself, I can assimilate into that community. And so that I think is another part of my rearing that made this part of my personality and character.
Yeah.
You know.
So you settled down in your school years at high school, university.
Mm. So in high school, 10th grade, I did my first radio show. It was an after school radio program. I went to a performing arts high school. And so there was a radio station in the basement, but it wasn't being used. But the reason that I even found out that it existed was because on top of the school, part of like our iconic landscape of the high school is this huge radio tower. And so I finally, after 2 years, was just like, what does this tower do? I didn't even know what the tower was meant to do. Just like this huge kind of structure on top of the school. So once I learned there was a radio tower, I petitioned the school faculty to see if, they would let me strike it up. And they're like, the equipment's down there, but it's been dormant for years and years. So I went down there, layer of dust on the equipment. It's almost like an 80s coming of age movie. You flip the switch and the lights come up under the dust. We blow a layer of dust off. We're like, let's see if this thing works.
It still works.
Yeah, and I started an after-school radio program. And this tower had about a 5-mile radius. So in the Bay Area, the cities are very small, but they're next to each other. So it's Richmond, Oakland, Berkeley, El Cerrito, Albany, all these cities are within, just a few miles of radius. So 5 miles gets you about 3 cities in the Bay Area. And so that is where I started broadcasting. And I really was very much into forensic debate, and I was into government. And so because I was so into oratory and able to present things and make arguments and, also I enjoyed, television, legal programs. So people thought I was going to be a lawyer. And of course, in the Bay Area, the big school there is Cal, the Berkeley Law is a huge program. So that was the direction that people expected me to go. However, I was in the performing arts. I was also doing the school plays. I was doing the radio show. I was like, finding different ways to perform. I had done musical theater. And so I decided that, my mother actually moved to Los Angeles in like the summer of my 11th to 12th grade year. So I was like on my own from that point forward. So, but when I graduated high school, I was able to move to LA because she was already living there and established there. So that's what I decided to do instead of school, which was a, difficult thing for her to accept, not going to college was something that she was not anticipating me deciding to do.
Yeah.
But, she hadn't been to college. So I think it was important to her that I go.
Yeah.
And instead, I decided to pursue this career. And now my mother's in her doctorate program. In her, I won't reveal her age, but right now, today, she's in her doctorate program. Has been in school for the past almost 10 years.
Oh, how cool.
And she's about to be a doctor.
Oh, mate, that is so cool. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So you leave high school. You've started your journalist journey.
Mm.
When did it steer towards the boxing?
Never the intention. When I was doing the program, even in high school, I was talking about current events. I was talking about, whatever a 10th or 11th grader thinks is important.
Yeah.
And it was always kind of like headline newsy debate and social commentary. But I begun the boxing the very, very first time was when I was in 5th grade. I lived on top of a hill in Richmond. They call it Point Richmond because there was a tall mountain there at the point, right? And so there's the Richmond area, which is like the flatlands that are, very urban, very tough neighborhood. And then you could go like down this stretch of road to another area that was still technically Richmond, but it was Point Richmond, which was a little bit more affluent, like up on the hill and like that. So even though I went to school, like again, I went to a different school every year, right? So, I was going to school. I think the year prior might have been El Cerrito, and then Berkeley, and then to school in Point Richmond. So it was like yet another new community and whatnot. And I had to walk up this big hill to get home. And on that hill, there's this old guy with a garage, had hanging punching bags in the garage. And I would walk past this garage every day, and like, there'd be guys there banging on the back of the old man, shouting at him. Again, this stuff was like,
A Rocky
right
movie.
out of right out of a
Right out of Rocky.
But I also wasn't stopping. I'd be in stride and just kind of trying to get take as much in as I could without getting noticed, which was not my personality because, again, even at that age, I was already performing and whatnot. So it wasn't like I was shy. It was just that I didn't know how to approach that and what was going on in there, and walking on my own. These are grown men in there banging away. And then one day, I didn't realize that I had stopped, and I was staring finally. And then the old man said, "Well, it's about time. Get in here." You know what I mean?
So he noticed you.
Every day, I'm walking by every day.
He must have been waiting. I'm just waiting for this kid. This kid will stop.
Yeah. So he done that and brought me in, and I started to hit the bag, and that was really my first experience in boxing. And it wasn't that I really carried on with boxing consistently from there, but occasionally I would go in there and I would hit the bag and stuff. I was still very much a performing arts kid, and then depending on what time I would be coming home, because I was doing plays after school and stuff like this. Whether the garage was open or not would be whether I stopped in. So that kind of like planted the seed. And then I really got into boxing more once I graduated high school, moved to LA, and my godfather is a man named Dana Bratton, and he was the trainer to the stars. He was getting like Kurt Russell ready for movies. He done like, all these John Carpenter films, and he was really an incredible, not just boxing coach, but also one who could impart the spirit of fighting. So obviously all these movies are not boxing movies, but there's always fighting in these films. And he was just getting people ready for the mindset of being in a film, and what it's really like in a fight is part of his thing, And then on top of that, musicians were getting ready for music tours and stuff like Beck. He would train them with boxing to get in condition to tour. And so while that's happening, I'm meeting these people. I'm boxing every day, 3-4 sessions a day. I'm a teenager at this point, like fresh out of high school. And he took me to Wild Card Boxing Gym. Freddie Roach's gym. And it just, fairly recently opened at that point. It wasn't, Manny Pacquiao wasn't there yet. Freddie Roach was, an established trainer, but, making his way in his career early days. It was still the James Toney, like sunset of James Toney's career. And he was the big man at the gym. And so at this stage, I was training for sport, but working on movie sets as a film loader. This is not digital cameras. These are actual, film mags. So you got to go in the dark room on set during the shoot and change over film mags and put the film in the can, keep it in the dark space, put the new film in the mag in the complete darkness. So it's a craft unto itself, right? Yeah. And my aspiration was to be a film camera operator. So at the time, Panavision was the only place you could really get, cut your teeth doing that. And it was very much like everything is, somewhat of an old boy system. And you got to know people, and you got to get in the system. So I was fortunate enough to be working on good, film crews and camera crews and getting these jobs, major motion pictures, doing film loading and music videos. And I wanted to operate. So the way I decided to do it, rather than go to Panavision and kind of sleep around there and try to get opportunities in the room for no pay, which is another thing that made it kind of a class system, because to be able to afford to go every day to a camera house
without
and
wages,
learn as an apprentice with no money in LA, no pay for it, until one of these ACs decides to bless you with an opportunity, or you can climb into some film crew and then, get your union days and pay for that, yet you're not making any money. That's going to be reserved for kids who are being funded by their parents or are independently wealthy people. That didn't describe me, but I had the hustle. So I had my camera, my little own camera rig, and I was spending so much time at the gym. All I was doing was working and going to the gym. So because Wildcard was the place where contenders and world champions would train, and Freddie Roach had, a stable of marquee fighters, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, there was always sparring sessions for hours sometimes. And again, James Toney, while in the sunset of his career, was still the big man.
Phenomenal fighter.
And he would spar for rounds and rounds and rounds, and he was a major shit talker, big, personality.
Yeah.
And I took my camera rig in there and started shooting sparring sessions. Now, the sparring sessions were shot in the ring in the main part of the gym, which had a window behind it that we keep open. So the sunlight was coming in, and, it's a boxing gym, so there's no AC or anything. So in the summer, especially, it's hot, the windows are open. But that provided interesting lighting. And with my camera work, I could kind of play with the shadows and try to keep live action in place. So in my mind, I am learning how to do camera work independently, how I could shoot things with my own rig and figure out how I could get my style of camera work together. And what ended up happening was I was shooting these sparring sessions with these marquee fighters that had some news value. But I didn't realize that was a thing, because at the time there was no boxing internet coverage. This is the websites, It's not YouTube. This is when everybody had websites. Most of them were either news oriented or chat sites, something like this. But it wasn't sports news. It certainly wasn't boxing news. And so there was one site that was on the internet called Max Boxing, and they would do boxing news, and they was just basically writers. It was all
Ring Magazine.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, but yeah, even Ring Magazine, that was still obviously a paper publication, and at the time, that's still how boxing was really covered.
Yeah,
paper magazines and newspaper
boxing
articles.
Ring,
And then occasionally, if it was a huge fight, if it's Mike Tyson or the big names at the time, they'd get some mainstream news coverage on the 6 o'clock news or a sports show for 30 seconds to 2 minutes.
Yeah.
But even to this day, I don't think there's any real hub of broadcast level boxing news, especially in the States. So I shot this sparring session that was between James Toney and Danny Green. Now, my hustle was, at this point, I realized that not only was there not any online coverage of boxing, which wasn't even, to be fair, in my mind at the time, but there was also no tradition of boxers training off of video. Like football players, and I mean American football players, but this probably is true of European football as well, that they watch tape. They go into the locker room, the coach runs the video, this is how you ran this play, this is how you ran this play, this is how you're supposed to do it, this is how we designed the play, this is where you fucked it up, this is where you got it right.
Yeah.
And the X's and O's, as they say, it's not all chalkboard, they run in video. Same thing for basketball, same thing for just about every other sport, but boxing, which is the sport where you are the only person on your team once the bell rings.
That's right.
You have no other vantage point to see the plays. There's nobody to pass the ball to. You only know what's going on from your POV, and these guys never get another POV of what's happening.
Yeah.
And not only do they not do that in training, but if you were watching tape of a fight, well, that's a fight that's already happened. That fight, the result's done. Maybe if you rematch the guy, that tape is valuable. But if you're using your last fight to train for your next fight, that's not the same guy you fought last time.
Yeah.
So there's only so much you can get out of that. So me having this footage of these sparring sessions, I realized that the fighters, wanted to see themselves. And so, over a course of 3 hours, which was not uncommon, of sparring sessions, you've got at least a half a dozen to 10 different guys in and out of the ring in that time. And I'm shooting on a mini DV tape. This is a little small cassette. Then people were using VHS tape. So what I did, I would go home, spend hours when I got home, taking that little mini DV and cutting up your sparring session. Because as you're aware, being in the boxing game, if you're the fighter who's getting ready and you're training with different sparring partners.
Yeah.
It may be me for 2 rounds, then him for 2 rounds, and another guy for 3 rounds, and another guy for 3 rounds, and then you can get your 12 rounds out of that. And then it may be you who wants the sparring footage. Now, if that happens, that's easy for me. Well, what if it's the guy who only did 3 rounds with you, but he wants his sparring session with the 3 rounds, and they don't want the other 2 hours of sparring with these other guys, and sometimes you get out and then you'll get back and spar with another guy.
Yeah.
So I'm going through making individual sparring session tapes for guys and charging them $20 a pop for the cassette,
Yeah.
And so I made that a little business. That's how I paid my gym dues. That's how I kind of earned a little money on the side, and that was a good hustle. And then when James Toney and Danny Green got it on, that was the first one that kind of escaped the gym as, hey, somebody's got this tape, because that was a fight that at the time could have been made as a televised fight.
And we both know some sparring sessions you would pay to watch anyway. They're that good.
Well, we know that,
Yeah.
and the boxing public doesn't.
Yeah.
And not only do they not know that, they wouldn't even think of how you would get something like this. These guys get paid to fight on television, so you think at the time they're not going to give that away for free. But again, the internet was kind of new when it came to posting footage. They weren't nearly as guarded about this. Some people don't really understand the reach of the internet at the time. And because this industry didn't exist online, people were not as apprehensive about it. So television news was the ones that came at me to get this Danny Green, James Toney footage. And I got a little bidding war going with the TV stations at the time, because this is a fight that not only could have been made, but didn't seem like it would be made. So this might be the only time these guys ever mix it up.
Yeah.
And so to your point, not only is it in the gym footage worth watching, but it might be the only time you ever see.
You're going to see these two going at it. Yeah.
And once the television channels got to going, got it up to like $500 worth of an outlet wanted me to just deliver the tape and let them run it. But the first call I got was from Max Boxing, because they were a boxing website. They knew that this thing happened before anybody, and I knew some of the writers over there, and they called me up. They didn't have the $500 to give me, much less. I think they might have offered me like $150 or whatever. And I was playing the field trying to figure it out. Got it up to 500. Then I called Max Boxing back, and I said, you know what? I'm going to give it to you guys for free. And they were like, yeah, okay, great, awesome.
Did you also give it to the guys for 500?
No. You can only sell it one time for exclusivity to somebody. But I'll give it to you guys for free. All you got to do is give me a year-long contract. You pay me monthly, and you get all these for free.
Yeah.
Well, and I quoted a price. At the time, it was probably like $350 a month or something.
Yeah.
Just to keep me going. Well, we don't know. And then I was like, all right. I hung up. I was selling to the other guys. They called me back in 30 seconds. All right, we'll do it.
Yeah.
And that's how it got on to Max Boxing. But then the question became, how do we put this on? We just throw it up the way I did it with all this anticipation. And they were like, yeah, it's still the game. Let's get it out as soon as possible while the conversation is on and hot and people are talking about this thing. I was like, but wait a minute. I was the only one there at the time that was observing everything. I know James. I saw Danny come in. I should tell the story of how this thing even came together. And so then developed in my mind, what if we put this on as if it were its own show that you were watching on TV, since you may never get to see this fight on TV. Let's put it on the internet as though you're watching it on TV, which means I give you some backstory on how this thing came together. I got Doug Fisher, who was working at Max Boxing at the time, one of the founders of Max Boxing, who's now, which is why I thought it was interesting that you mentioned Ring Magazine. He's the editor-in-chief of Ring Magazine now, Doug Fisher. And he and I commentated the sparring session. We got into like a studio and put the voiceover on the sparring session, included the kind of VO of the setup. We did replays, talked through the whole thing, and put that out. And I called that show Gym Wars. And so that was the first big show on the internet of boxing, Gym Wars. And I repeated this process so that we had episodes after episodes of Gym Wars. It was wildly popular. It's still iconic to this day. People are watching old footage of all different kind of fighters that I shot these sparring sessions for and commentated. So that became like a life of its own. And as the internet grew and as the popularity of people seeing things online grew, it became a little bit more difficult to get top level fighters to agree to be on the internet like that. And because I was adding value to the show as it was going on, I started to talk to the fighters before the sparring sessions. I would talk to them after. I would add commentary. And then the interviews that I was doing with them started to have a life of their own. It became, as popular as a show and sometimes even more popular than the episode. People were these little clips of these interviews with these guys in the locker room before they go out or afterwards. And I was making real journalistic inroads to interviewing fighters. And because we're getting less and less agreement to get the episodes filmed of sparring sessions, I would do more and more interviews. And then that is how interviewing the boxers came on. And I tell you, at this time, this was not a thing.
And what age were you then still?
At that point, I'm 21, 22.
Okay.
Something like this. And I had, I first, I think, got into wild card when I was like 19.
Yeah.
Started shooting sparring sessions by 20, something like that. And so by this time, now I'm establishing a genre of journalism that's covering boxing online through a series of interviewing the fighters and the main players in the sport. And people were still very much relying on written articles for this kind of coverage. Yeah. And I was putting video up and interview videos and then going to press conferences and interviewing there ultimately. And so that's where this genre grew from. This wasn't a thing before I started doing it. And now it's the primary way boxing is covered till this day.
Yeah. Right. So you're at the wild card, you're putting out these videos, you've got your own little channel going on. Boxing is obviously your passion now. And this is what it does to most people. Once you get involved, it's bit you and that's it, you're addicted. Mm-hmm. But it's my passion, it's the most beautiful sport on earth. So you've trained with these boxers, so you've actually got a personal physical feeling of the sport.
I'll tell you something. I have a passion for boxing as a sport, undoubtedly. It's the spirit of the fight inside an individual that is what I'm addicted to.
Yeah.
Now, there is an expression of that fight that is boxing, which is the sport that I love. But it's the internal struggle of overcoming that adversity inside yourself that I'm addicted to.
Yeah.
That is the bit that goes and transcends the sport of boxing. That is the thing that I realized during COVID, really, when you couldn't get at the boxing sport because it wasn't happening and everything was shut down. And what I was trying to figure out, what did I really miss about this? Is there a way to recreate this? Is there a way to get at what is now missing from me not being able to cover the sport of boxing? I had to really think about what was at the heart of that love. And was it really the sport, or what was it about the sport that made that sport so attractive? And it was the fight inside the individual. And that is what I believe might separate my interviews from some others, because that is what I'm really always hoping to get at.
The passion from the fighter's heart.
Yeah, but it's the willingness to face and overcome internal adversity. And you never know what a person sees as their obstacle. And very rarely is it the opponent first. Yeah. Very rarely. And the thing
normally himself.
Well, yeah, but what aspect of it and what part of life challenges have they had to overcome and defeat even to get into a ring, into a position to be a marquee fighter or fight for a world title or defend one? Those are the stories. Those are the internal workings that make me want to pursue this journalistic endeavor. Yeah. These are the stories that I get at. And so when COVID happened and I wasn't able to get at the boxers, I looked around and I was so fortunate to be in an environment full of incredibly accomplished, unique, talented, fierce fighters in their own right, but in totally different fields outside of sport and that level of athletic competition. Musicians, artists, comedians, politicians even. I was coming through this environment that I was in, and that was Dave Chappelle's really home in Yellow Springs, Ohio. He was putting on comedy shows in a cornfield, and because he's such a magnetic star and was really challenging the boundaries of COVID at the time when people weren't meant to gather, he had
So he's
testing
out in the middle of a field.
yeah, he found a way to do it outside responsibly.
Social
testing people,
distancing.
social distancing, put a whole mechanism together where this would be possible for people to laugh and live entertain. And the biggest and most talented names in the comedy world came and converged on Yellow Springs, and people from outside the comedy world of incredible note came and performed music there. And people, like I said, Andrew Yang was, had just recently run for president at the time, and Dave Chappelle supported his presidential campaign, and then Yang came out and spent some time in Yellow Springs, and countless others. And so I began to interview those people in that time about the fight in them. And I called that show Till This Day. That is my podcast. That was the first season of Till This Day, was recorded in that environment with those people. And it was not only therapeutic, but it really honed my vision and made me understand what it was about me that connected me to the fighters as boxers, but also to my friends and people of incredible note as warriors and fighters themselves. Like, I realized for the first time after having covered boxing for so long that you don't have to be a boxer to be a fighter.
No.
And just because you're not a boxer doesn't mean you're not fighting.
Yeah.
These people are fighting to be who they are and had to fight to overcome so many bits of adversity, internally and externally, to persevere and be who they imagine themselves to be. Yeah. And I had to do the same thing. And part of that, for me, was actually doing that show and realizing that that's what it took. That's what it was that is at the real core of who I am and what I do.
Right. Okay. So, you've been around a lot of the gyms. What's the best gym you've been to and why?
The best gym I've been to, and by best, I mean for me, is Wildcard. Because that's where I started my career. That's where I understood the other side of boxing that happens off television. Yeah. That's where I learned what trainers and fighters' relationships are like. That was my college.
The politics of the sport.
Right. If you ask a academic laureate what's the best school they've ever been to, it's going to have, what's their favorite school? It's going to have to be a school that they've attended.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
This is the school I attended, was Wildcard Boxing Gym. So that, for me, is the best gym because that was my proving ground.
It's your home.
Right. The gym that I most enjoy now is Pug Yard. It's Don Charles' gym. Yeah. It's because he is a teacher of the sport. He has the same kind of willingness to face adversity in his personal life and show others how to overcome that opponent inside yourself before you face that opponent across the ring.
Yeah.
He's created an environment not unlike Wildcard, where young men are becoming mature men, where young scrappers are becoming fighters, are becoming boxers, are becoming talented professionals. Yeah. This is where I watched boys become men, Wildcard, I mean. And now knowing what that process looks like, I can recognize it someplace else. This is, a place where you have somebody at the helm who is not just looking to churn out a paycheck for whoever can score a good purse, but who's looking to create men of quality and is also a mentor for other trainers. He has trainers that train here in his gym with their own fighters. These trainers have their own fighters, but in a way, Don's training trainers to train fighters.
Yeah.
And Freddie Roach did the same thing.
Yeah.
So I can recognize an environment like that, and it makes me understand that I'm blessed again to find myself in an environment like that. So I would say for me, those are the two most significant gyms that I've been to because they share that atmosphere, that I believe men sharpen men like steel sharpens steel.
Yeah.
And so in both of those environments, you had men of steel sharpening other men of steel.
Yeah.
And that's a process that is unmatched for me in value.
Lovely. So, they're your favourite gyms. You've been around enough gyms and you've watched enough sparring. What would you say would be the best spar you've ever seen?
Amir Khan and Manny Pacquiao. And fortunately, if you dig around on the internet, you can still find clips of it. But I was there that day. I shot footage. I was between that window I was talking about and the ring on the apron. That's some of the best sparring I've seen. And at the time, you didn't know what that would mean in the annals of history because those guys never did fight.
No,
so
that's right.
That's
That's
one of those
one.
gym wars that you'll never see in the ring for any kind of professional record, but they got it on in the gym. And James Toney, I think, holds a very nostalgic place in my heart for his sparring sessions because I just saw a guy who was such a huge personality, who was doing a lot of things that were unorthodox, who was just a battle cat in their constantly just war of attrition. He just wear you down. He wasn't no fancy footwork. It wasn't 100 punches around. He wasn't doing anything flashy or fun. He was just breaking guys down. And it was almost like I would imagine maybe George Foreman in his later years, and I don't mean that is a weight comparison. I just mean that as a style. Once you know so much, you're so intelligent about how to execute boxing that a lot of this other stuff goes out the window. You're getting older. You are a little heavier. You're not
you do what you have to do.
In fashion. You just know how to counter. You know how to lean on a guy. You know how to break a guy down with minimal effort, really, which is its own marvel to witness. You see the flashy guys with all the footwork and the punch combination speed and all that stuff. Of course, that's dazzling. But when you understand the sport and you see a guy be able to break somebody down with minimal effort, that is as dazzling to watch.
I've got a little bit of personal experience with James Toney. When the USA came over for the heavyweight prize fighter, your call.
Mm-hmm.
I was training Matt Legg for that fight against. Well, we didn't know who we were going to get. We drew James Toney in the first.
Oh, that's too bad.
I was like, we couldn't have picked a worse opponent. Do you know what I mean? And he was so fuel efficient.
Yeah.
In the first 2 rounds, it was like we could win this.
Yeah.
We could get this.
Yeah.
It was only 3 rounds, 3-round sprints.
Uh-huh.
He just waited for the first 2 rounds. Boom. In the third, I was like, oh, shit. But
that's the marvel. It's like crazy. You don't, I know
just
exactly
so fuel efficient, weren't he? He never used anything he didn't have to use. His angles on defense were just like, wow. You can watch it a million times on telly. When you sit next to the guy, and it is like, wow, just his little subtle steps, his little lateral movements. Mm-hmm. We were like, oh shit.
Because boxing is also a minimalist sport. Mm-hmm. The UFC, MMA is really got so much going on, and it's such a complex way to learn how to fight because there's so many threats, there's so many things you have to defend, there's so many ways you have to be talented that it really is incredible to watch. Like guys who poo-poo the MMA, I don't understand it. It is incredible
it's very, very
to watch.
intricate.
The thing I love about boxing, which makes that more of a drive for me than MMA, is because it's the opposite. There's so few things that you have to utilize. There are so few ways you can attack or defend. You only have 2 hands. You can only punch. You've got 2 feet that you have to figure out how to use your feet for defense and offense. You have to use your hands for defense and offense. And then it is the science of having the exact same tools as the other guy. So few things that you can really do. So few weapons that you can use. And figuring out how to contrast that with what the other guy is doing to get the advantage. That, to me, is the kind of science that I like. Other guys like, oh, man, you got all these elements. What you're going to use to counter that is a multitude of different possibilities. That's fascinating and fun, too, if that's how your mind works. My mind works the other way.
Wow.
Boil it all down to the barest, the most essential of essentials, and you both only have that.
Yeah.
And how can you get just that little bit of an edge to make the difference?
I'm right with you on that, because I think that's where you see the real skill of a fighter. When you isolate him to two weapons, that's when the real skill of the sport comes into a fray. You can't. They've got so different multi-sport combats. You've got so many different tools to use. Your feet, your elbows.
Yeah.
Once you start isolating a human to just two weapons, his two hands, that's when skill, thinking, every part of you has to be on fire.
Yeah. It's a different kind of mathematics, if you will. And I respect both immensely. It's just what you like. I like that over the other, but I can very much appreciate the difficulty level of both.
Oh, definitely, and total respect for all of the combat sports, because quite any combat sport's probably the hardest you'll ever do.
That's right.
But I'm still going to leave with the
man.
boxing.
You're a boxing man. That's it.
I'm still going to leave with the boxing. So, your best ever interview, Rahim?
That's not for me to say, right?
You've done thousands of brilliant ones, but Michael Parkinson always remembers Ali. There must be one up to this point what really sticks in your mind.
I mean, I'm not dodging the question. It really doesn't work that way. What works for me is more the impact maybe of interviews. Could be something I could hone in on, because each conversation that I have the privilege of conducting with a fighter is relevant to, or relative to, the environment that we're in at the time and the emotional content of that fighter in the moment, what I'm able to extract from that. So a moment that may not have gotten as much media reaction or attention might have been something that was a personal touch for me in the moment. And I recognize a connection with a guy that might be a superstar or might be an undercard fighter at the time. And so we shared a moment that was personal, that made me feel like, man, that I just did something there, and we shared something. And to me, that's a significant interview. That is something that makes me feel like I've contributed to this craft something of value. At the same time, we all appreciate reaction and appreciation. We know when there's a big interview that everybody says, oh, that was a moment, you know? One of the first moments like that may have been my first interview with Manny Pacquiao, when he was staying at the Vagabond Hotel next door to Wild Card, and this hotel is aptly named. And he's in there.
I don't even want to imagine this.
Right? Six other Filipino guys, and they're like sharing this room. So, this is when Manny Pacquiao is cutting his teeth at Wild Card. He's just there, fresh, I guess, out of the Philippines. Bob Arum walks him through the door. Freddie agrees to train him, and now these are the early days. And so there's no glitz, no glamour, no super team. He has a little entourage, because Filipinos, they travel as a family. They support each other in that way, and he's supporting these guys. And we're sitting on an air conditioning unit sticking out of the wall doing an interview in this like rundown hotel room. And in that environment, the emotional content of the fellow I was talking to in broken English made me know that this was a special moment. I'm not saying to you that I could predict the heights of his career, but I understood the content of his drive. I recognized what was happening in that room, that this guy had carried these maybe 6 people with him to Los Angeles, but a whole country on his back. Like, they looked to him as their champion already, that he was the one that was going to represent the Philippines in the world.
Yeah.
And seeing that in a guy's eyes and understanding the pressure that was on him, but the unrelenting certainty that he had that this is what he was meant to do and who he was going to be, that's something that in the moment
Yeah.
I was connected to and touched me and drove me and inspired me to follow his career as a journalist internally. You know, I'm at Wildcard. I'm going on the runs with him. I'm shooting his training sections. We're in Los Feliz Park. He's doing runs. He's doing his ab crunches, all this stuff. Early days all the way through the most recent days. I've always been right there with Manny Pacquiao as a journalist, but also being inspired as a friend and marvel at the kind of man this guy is, how generous he is, how much he takes his place in the Filipino community and as their real global representative, as a warrior, seriously. And he understands what he means to people. And then he feels like everything that he gets is for all of them. So I've never seen a more generous guy and to a more impoverished nation.
Yeah.
It means as much to a people who had such little global presence as that guy. So watching that career from where I got to be involved at the very beginning all the way through, which we don't even know if it's the end yet. He's still trying to get in the Olympics, still trying to make a fight. It is one of those things that you never forget and never really will be anything but kind of right at the top of my mind when I need a little bit of energy and pick me up and resolve to continue on.
What a special
There's
athlete.
never a better source of that than a Manny Pacquiao.
Yeah. Super special athlete.
Mm-hmm.
Super gifted, man. So, your best podcast.
My best podcast.
Which is the best podcast you've done?
Again, it's not for me to say which is the best.
Which one have you enjoyed most?
Now, this one is a trick question because I won't say that I enjoyed it the most, but like I say, the moments that have the most impact on me are the ones that stick with me, that I find to have the most residual value, right? Now, what an audience member might identify as that interview or that moment could be very different. A moment that I might find to be somewhat insignificant or even trivial, some other person might be like, man, that's the thing that spoke to me. And if that speaks to somebody, then
you've done your job.
I've not only done my job, but I've done a credit to journalism and something for myself that I wanted to accomplish.
Yeah.
But of the first season of Till This Day, the episode that had the most significance was my interview with Bob Saget. It's another one of those interviews that in the moment, I recognized that there was something unique happening where I was really talking to somebody at a deeper level than even most good interviews. Like this was a bit of a heart-to-heart. We were sharing a lot about our souls. We were discussing things that you don't normally discuss in polite company or even raise on anything that would eventually be public. And that moment struck me in real time. The reason that this interview became significant publicly and took on even more weight for me is because it turned out to be the last interview that would be published of Bob Saget after his passing. Right? So it was the last conversation that most people, I guess anybody, would have the opportunity to hear with him. And the focus of the interview, naturally, because this is how I conduct interviews, I don't script out everything or anything, really. I just pick a starting place.
Yeah.
And because Bob and I are friends and had a trust in each other, we could start further into that level of intimacy than you might with someone you met on the first day and decided to conduct an interview. it had a lot to do with mortality. It had a lot to do with his family and the way he felt about his children and his wife and his career and what, at this time of his life, seeing possibly the sunset coming, and he wasn't nearly, an old man, but he, we all see, oh my God, how much time do I have left, and what have I done to this point? What do I want to do? What I've done meant to me thus far? And we got into the meaning of life to him, and what the future held, what he hoped to accomplish coming forward, and what he learned over the process of his many years as an entertainer, but more importantly, his experience just like a good dude.
Yeah.
That also had the privilege that I was experiencing at the time of being around a lot of really good dudes and talented men and women who were unique individuals in their field, but also in their spirit.
Yeah.
Right. So I knew in the time while we were doing this conversation that, man, this is special. I, on the episode, edited out a lot of what I was sharing, because my episodes are not about me. They're about the individual I'm talking to. And the premise of the show is the fight inside you, right? So I made sure that the episode focused on that. But in the room, it was back and forth. It was very much an even exchange of very personal, intimate views and experiences that we'd had through life and what brought us to this point. And I can't overlook, when talking about this interview, the environment that we were in. It's prime COVID. The world is shut down. We're all together with each other because Dave Chappelle created this environment that not only will never be recreated, because at least I hope the world doesn't shut down again, but because even at the time, nobody else would have been able to do that except for Dave Chappelle, who had this vision of what comedy needed to be in that time when everybody thought nothing could happen. No one could be around each other. People were falling into deep depressions. People were taking lives that were so busy, so congested with appointments and performances and itineraries and travel, from going from that to nothing. Can spin you out.
Yeah, it can kind of mess with you a bit.
Right. So imagine these type of people all experiencing that type of whiplash, having the great fortune of being able to be around each other, to support each other and to help each other get through it. And me having the opportunity to speak to many of them on camera, on audio, and all of them in person, in real life. All these conversations and moments, of course, are not recorded, but that's what got us all through it. In our own ways, we were able to help each other and be helped by each other. And so that conversation that really had a lot to do with mortality and life and how long we have and what it all really means, that conversation was had with Bob Saget. It ended up being the last conversation he would have for the public about those topics. And I believe his family was grateful to have an opportunity to hear that after his passing. And so that probably for me was the most impactful interview, because I know that it impacted specific people in a certain way that they will cherish. And in real time, it impacted me in a way that I will always cherish.
Brilliant. We spoke in Riyadh at the Fury Usyk, just before the Fury Usyk fight. And you let us know you were working with Reddit, with the AI for the boxing. It was exclusive. You told us that exclusively that night. Your knowledge now of not just the boxing, but you are gathering so much knowledge about the politics on the outskirts of the sport. So Reddit with this AI,
You're saying Reddit. What's Reddit? It's
Jabber,
Jabber.
Jabber, sorry.
Right.
So Jabber, with this AI, where do you think it's going to go? Is it going to be used? Are we going to get rid of judges, or are we always going to keep the judges? Because since we spoke, Rahim, it's been like round and round in my head. Will they eventually get rid of the judges? Will they just use AI?
Well, we were there to witness the undisputed heavyweight championship of the world having been out of reach for all fighters for a quarter century. Jabber making its debut on that fight, I believe we will look back in the annals of boxing history as a significant moment, not only because we got our first of this century undisputed champion, but because there was technology on the fight that is the future of the sport.
Yeah.
Both of those things, those moments colliding, something that is as old as boxing itself, a real undisputed champion.
Yeah.
And the moment that something came on the scene that had never been seen before, but will drive going forward the ability for the fans, the fighters, the judges, the promoters, the comms, the networks to know with certainty a set of facts, analytics on which we can judge rounds transparently and accurately.
Yeah.
Jabber is not intending to replace judging. Jabber is intending to make judging accurate. Because I don't believe boxing is a corrupt sport, and I believe that scarlet letter we have is really due to, more than anything else, just human error and subjectivity.
Yeah.
So we don't have a criteria by which to judge rounds, no matter who the judge is. There's
That's
no
right.
agreed upon set of criteria, but when you have a set of facts that all judges can reference, being the punch stats, and then not just the stats that you primarily see, power shots, punches landed, punches thrown, all the statistics that you're accustomed to seeing on any fight. That's one set of facts that you need in real time. But then there's also layer after layer after layer of analytics that are also produced by Jabber in real time that can tell you the flow of the fight, which punches are effective, and which number of punches are being thrown in combination, the distance between fighters, who's closing the distance and who's widening the gap. We have pressure and aggression that you can now separate those two things mathematically. You can look at it, not only in real time, but comprehensively what's happening in the fight.
Yeah.
There are 4 camera feeds, all trained on the fight. We get them from the network ISOs that are giving the AI an opportunity to watch the fight 360 degrees without missing a punch, without missing a millisecond, without getting tired, without looking away, without having any bias, without being swayed by the crowd noise.
Without human error.
Without human error.
Yeah.
You have now a set of facts we can all agree on, and now you can make your case as a judge. Your criteria for judging a round might differ from mine.
Yeah.
The reason the argument could never be settled is because what you saw might be different than what I saw.
You're seeing it, all 3 of them are seeing it from a different angle.
Right.
So,
and potentially missing different things and not seeing, for the truth of it, even the quality of a punch. Yeah, okay, you can say a punch landed, but was it partially blocked? What was the effect on target? That's part of how you decide how hard a shot was. Like Canelo was famous for rolling punches. Now you might see a Canelo roll a punch and be like, he took a lot off of that punch. That's barely a landed shot. The guy, rolled the punch. But from my angle, huge shot. Look how his head snapped around. Both of those arguments are valid and without Jabber. With Jabber, we can isolate that punch and say, this was the impact on target for that punch. This was whether or not this punch was landed cleanly. And now we know, okay, that was the quality of that punch. And then you and I can debate on whether or not Canelo won that round or lost that round based on the agreed upon set of facts as to what happened in the fight. Now I have to defend my criteria.
Yeah.
And no longer do we have to argue about what happened. Once you can take that off the table, what happened as a subjective opinion, now we can start to analyze people's criteria for judging around and determine if that is valid.
Yeah, yeah. So I think personally it will be a positive addition to the sport. I honestly do. You know, we've had some horrific decisions in the past few years. Capital Taylor, and I think AI is gonna change things up a bit.
Yeah, imagine if the judges between rounds at least had the opportunity to reference the statistics
access
and
the
the
information,
analytics,
yeah,
and then decide, like I say, based on their criteria, who won the round. But they'd be so much more confident that they could apply their criteria correctly because they know for a fact what happened.
They're the official stats.
That is a significant difference that I believe would elevate not only the experience of the fan who also has the opportunity to see these statistics and analytics populated in real time, but the credibility of the sport and the judging being accurate and not so easily corrupted. Yeah. And when I say corrupted, I don't necessarily mean paid off judges. I mean the crowd noise can corrupt your influence. Yeah. It could corrupt your scorecard by elements that are not at play in the actual.
A reporter sat next to you you could overhear him speaking. Like, what a great round for so and so.
Maybe he's right about that.
Yeah. I might have missed that. I'm going to put that down. Yeah,
exactly.
So it will be a positive.
Yeah, that's not corruption, but that's being corrupted.
Being influenced and corrupted. Yeah, bang on. So going back to the Riyadh, we spent a few days in Riyadh together. I don't think I've ever seen as many fairy tale stories for boxers as Riyadh. And I think it's the best thing ever happened to boxing.
Yeah.
You know, people are like, we can't get there to watch the fight. We can't do this. We can't do that. People are missing what the boxers get from this. The sacrifices they've made all their life, the life they've given up to get where they are, and then they get called to fight in Riyadh.
Yeah.
I think it's just the most beautiful thing to happen to these kids. You know, it's the hardest sport in the world for me personally. It's a horrific journey, and every fighter, what goes on it.
Boxers are the best thing to happen to boxing.
Ever happened to boxing.
Yeah. And the opportunity that these boxers get to prove their mettle in Riyadh is what is moving us all to support Riyadh season.
Yeah.
It's because if you give the fighter the opportunity to be the best and fight the best, they will take that opportunity and give their best.
Yeah.
So what has been the Achilles heel of the sport is that promoters and networks and purses and the amount of money that you potentially can make if you remain undefeated, all of these elements make it more difficult for the best to fight the best and get paid the best for it.
Yeah.
Those elements are in conflict, right? And
with history.
Just with the environment of the sport being so disjointed. Networks are not working together. Promoters are not working together. Fighters want to remain undefeated. Fighting a guy who could potentially beat you for lesser money because he's not a marquee name, but you are, doesn't make, it's like, you know, risk versus reward. Yeah, you want to be the best, but you also want to take care of your family. You want to make the most money that you can. Maybe fighting that guy down the road, if he can get his name up so we can make more money out of this fight. You can't fault a guy for taking that into consideration because there's no guarantees in this sport. You don't have the kind of contracts that you have in team sports.
No, there's no aftercare packages
that you'll ever fight again. Every time you step into the ring, that could be the last time. And if you don't fight again, you're not getting paid again.
That's right. Yeah.
These promoters are not paying you to sit on your ass. If you get injured, you're not getting paid for the rest of the season.
That's right.
If you will.
There's no wages.
So these guys are also very aware of what their ability to market themselves and to sell tickets, the value of that means. And because the Mayweather era really made undefeated such a marker for how valuable a fighter is,
yeah,
they protect the O. And we as fans and observers don't want that to be the marker because we want to see the best fighters fight the best fighters.
When they're
But
at
if the
their
two
best.
best fighters fight each other, they both have an O. As we say, somebody's O has got to go. Well, if that also means that somebody's market value has to go, they're going to be pretty leery to put that on the line with a guy who could beat them. If I could fight 3 fights with guys who I could definitely beat and keep my quote up, may keep my purse high, or fight one guy who might beat me that will devastate my purse and also take that O off my record. Why wouldn't I just fight 3 guys I could definitely beat and make triple the money instead of fighting this one guy one time and maybe never be able to make that money that I used to make again?
Yeah.
That's a calculation that they are not just okay to consider, but kind of obligated to consider if you're a responsible business person.
That's right. Yeah,
Nobody loves you in the sport of boxing when it becomes business, right? Boxing is a business, not just a sport. You're not in high school anymore, so you're getting paid to perform. And when you stop being able to perform and sell tickets, I don't care who your promoter is, what network you're on, what your entourage tells you, you're done.
You're only as good as
very,
your last
very
fight.
aware of that. So we can't criticize a fighter who protects his earning potential.
Definitely,
and that's what guys are doing. And in Saudi, it gives them an opportunity to protect their earning potential while fighting the best fights, while testing themselves against the elite of the sport, while challenging for world titles. And if you lose in a fight that you represent yourself well, that's a tough fight, it's a close fight, that losing that O doesn't necessarily diminish your earning potential the way it once did if you are entertaining and thrilling for the fans to watch. This Riyadh season is not something that's been going on for decades and decades, so we don't know what's coming, but we can base it on what we've seen in the last few years, which is the only time it's really been in existence. But so far, if you are an entertaining fighter who leaves it all in the ring, is very competitive and willing to fight the best, they'll bring you back. Win or lose.
Willie
You
Hutchinson,
can't ask for more than that.
I think Willie Hutchinson says it all. For what he's been through over the past few years to where he is now, the sacrifices he's made have come to fruition, and his life's, banging now. I just love Willie. I think he's one of the best athletes. His commitment to it is phenomenal. So it is changing fighters and their families' lives, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, money makes strange bedfellows.
Yeah,
and so the people we could, never see in bed together, are now cuddling.
Frank and Eddie, come on.
I mean, it's not just Frank and Eddie; it's the network heads. Like we've seen now multiple fights that are simulcast on 3 networks at the same time. Like you would never imagine that being possible. When Pacquiao and Mayweather fought, they were on Showtime and HBO in the States, and that just was the only way that fight could ever get made. And you know how long that fight took to get made, and we still were astounded that they were able to simulcast that fight. That, was thought to be a one-off, like only reserved for the biggest of the hugest fights that was still 5 years too late.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing this happen routinely. That's money.
Yeah.
That's making the difference. And that is evidence that nobody actually cares about the fighter, or even, to be fair, the sport. When it is weighed against financial profits.
Yeah.
And so if you're a fighter, you have to be keenly aware of that and pursue your career with that knowledge. Otherwise, you're missing your own duty, looking after yourself. What did they say? Protect yourself at all times?
Yeah.
Well, that's part of it. You got to protect yourself outside of the ring.
And
in
the
ring.
Yeah. Right, okay. So, I'm going to put this out there. I'm just going to throw this out there. You started your aspirations as a young kid. Was Michael Buffer anything to do with them?
Michael Buffer is a central part of the sport and the history of boxing as a unique individual. What I love about Michael is that just like boxing is an individual sport, you want to have your trainers and your coaches and your promoters and all that stuff. When the bell rings, it's just you. Yeah. Michael Buffer has the entire universe of boxing at times focused on this fight. These two giant names, these incredible competition that's about to take place, and there is a silence that he has to fill. Yeah. There is a moment that he has to capture with his voice and words just before that bell rings, and everyone is dialed into his one individual performance, and he, every single time, fills that space with nothing but electricity and is the exact voice you want to hear in the exact tone you want to hear it right before that bell finally sounds that we've all been waiting for, this iconic moment to begin. Michael Buffer is chiseled himself in the center of the sport in a way like no one else has. So in that sense, me as a kid, even seeing someone with that spotlight in that moment that's so big, fill that space, absolutely. Nothing less than a beacon, like a North Star. Like, that's what I got to follow. Like, that's where I want to be in the sky. Yeah. You know, I'm not aspiring to be a ring announcer, but I am aspiring to have that kind of effect on a moment. Michael captures a moment. Michael owns a moment. Yeah. And so Michael has become a moment.
He's become that.
His coined phrase, when you hear that, it's a moment because he said it.
Yeah. You know you're going to watch it. You know you're going to watch it.
The ultimate.
Yeah.
So yes, I want to be a moment, and I want to create moments constantly that people cherish as their own. So that guy is the quintessential deliverer of a moment in boxing. And so when I see the way also he has protected his brand and constantly represented the regal elegance of the sport, like the way that we think of boxing in its early black and white days, a smoke-filled room of tuxedos and fur coats and, you know, Rolls Royces pulling up to the arena, and people really seeing this as an affair, a gala, an event that is meant to be for highest of the high society for all of us that are the grimiest of grimies, right? And those two worlds meet in this elegant, decadent atmosphere to watch the sweet science perform itself and unfold in front of us. That's how I see Michael is not only the current and most iconic moment of boxing, but he also represents that entire history and that feeling that something special is happening. And we should be. That's why I wear a tuxedo and wear my finest suit. And that is the guy that I am always trying to get a kind word from when he sees me ringside. If Michael doesn't approve of what I'm wearing, I have failed.
Yeah.
This guy really represents what boxing should be. He is the kindest, most generous guy you're going to meet. Yeah. He is humble. He gives up his time. He obviously knows the sport inside and out. He's always with a smile. People come up and take pictures. Thousands of people want to take pictures with him at every event, on all the street, at all the time. I've never seen him be unkind or turn anyone away. Yeah. He has what boxing should be. He is on his sleeve. Like, if you ever want to be like, man, what do we want this sport to look like? Who is the best ambassador really for the entire universe of boxing?
Buffer.
That's Michael Buffer.
Buffer. Why I said that at this point was Michael calmly brings so much passion in his words. And the way his mannerisms are, you know from his calmness, there's going to be a massive storm come very shortly. But that's what he does. And with yourself, Rahim, your energy, you know, the way you speak and your energy, that's why I've brought that to this today. You know, I think you could be a good Michael Buffer. I think you could make a great announcer. You know, your energy, your knowledge as well. You know, we're coming to the end, and you've already shown what knowledge you've got of this sport. So I don't see why it shouldn't happen.
I would love to be the Michael Buffer of journalism.
Yeah. That's cool. I'd like to see
there's
you.
only going to be one Michael Buffer of ring announcing. You know what I mean? It's like that.
As of now,
as of ever. Like, you know what I mean? There's certain people. I don't like this phrase of, the such and such of such and such. LeBron James is not the Michael Jordan of basketball. Michael Jordan is the Michael Jordan of basketball and will only ever be that. LeBron James is the LeBron James of basketball, and that means something different. That's not a knock on James. It's just that he'll never be Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan is Michael Jordan. You understand? And Michael Jordan is not Dr. J. Dr. J is not Will Chamberlain. It's these guys have owned a moment and defined an element that has, in some cases, like a Muhammad Ali, transcended the sport or the vocation that they're in a way that you can't duplicate and shouldn't try. Just be the you that you can be, that owns the moment that you create, and transcend the sport or the vocation that you're in and affect the world in the way that you can. Because you will not and cannot do what that individual did. All you can do is glean inspiration from them. And so there will be, in the future, other great voices in the sport of boxing. There will be other iconic catchphrases for sure at some point in the sport of boxing. But there will never be another Michael Buffer who did what Michael Buffer did in the time that he did it. And there will never be another catchphrase or an iconic word spoken in that quiet space before the storm that had the effect that Michael Buffer had on the sport, because everyone else will be chasing that foundation. Like, this house is on a foundation. We could tear the whole thing down and build again, but it doesn't mean the foundation has changed. It doesn't mean that the new builders have built a new foundation. I could just get credit for building an addition on the existing foundation. What if every layer of the house, every floor of the house wanted its own foundation? The house would collapse. You can't do it. Like, I'm going to be the foundation of the second floor. It's just the fucking ceiling, buddy. Be grateful that the foundation is there so you can build the second floor.
Okay. So, what is next for you, Rahim? What's coming next?
The next fight is the next thing, always for me. And fortunately, because the boxing world is so expansive and there are so many creative platforms on which we can express ourselves now, I have my irons in multiple fires. I would say Jabber is my driving focus outside of journalism itself. I believe that this technology does for the sport what it has needed in the entirety of my time on the planet, and I believe its entirety of its existence, which is a clear, factual, transparent, objective analysis of what's happening in the ring in real time.
I'm with you.
That is invaluable. I think the cancer on boxing is this veneer of corruption, is at very minimum this human error that makes it impossible for us to check and balance against poor decisions. I think we need something that is central, that is mutually agreed upon across the landscape of the sport as factual. So from that basis, we can grow the criteria by which to judge rounds consistently. I think there should be a criteria for which to judge boxing. Jabber's not that criteria. Jabber is the foundation on the house that allows us to build that criteria. I don't think it is hyperbolic to even say that Jabber is the cure for the cancer boxing has been living with. If we utilize this technology correctly and build on it for what it potentially can do, we will evolve the sport in a way that it has needed for so long, and will keep us not only in the forefront of all sports as a major sport globally, but will now give us the legitimacy and the confidence of the new fans that are coming into the sport. They can rely on a proper system of judging, and a fighter who wins on the night, wins on the card, that you can know that we got it right.
Yeah,
because there's nothing worse than seeing a great fight
and
at the end you feel like they got it wrong.
Yeah.
That is an impact on the fighter who loses and the fighter who wins, to be fair, because then that guy's career forever is questioned going forward because he got a decision that people feel like he didn't earn, and then is he a real champion? Oh yeah, well he's undefeated, but you don't forget that he almost lost it. And they don't want to hear that shit. And I would rather if I lost a fight, I would rather lose that fight on the record than live the rest of my career in life having to defend a bad decision. That's not my fault. It's not the fighter who's checking the scorecards or filling them out. He's lucky on the night.
His job.
And sometimes he could be unlucky on another night. So in a way, that's fair to him. You can't blame him. But nobody remembers the name of the judge who got it wrong.
No.
They remember the fighter who was the beneficiary of a judge having gotten it wrong, and he's the one who has to carry and defend that win for the rest of his career. That ain't right to him either.
That's right.
So this is the thing we want to eradicate in the sport. This is the tech that I believe is the foundation to do that. And so I am dedicated to getting this across all networks and making it a standard in the sport that we don't even think about anymore. We shouldn't even be thinking about it. It should be something that is so cooked in, so embedded, so expected, so a standard in the sport that we wouldn't accept anything less going forward. I can't see a way you could defend anything less because it's available. In another fight, there shouldn't be another fight that is fought at a professional level especially that doesn't have accurate, transparent, objective statistics that can be cross-checked even after the fact. It's not like, oh, you just have to take our word for it. If you want to go back and check, you can.
No.
You have...
We can now.
Yeah, you have the benefit of all 4 cameras trained on a fight, an AI brain that is calculating everything that's happening from a 360-degree angle, and anything that could possibly be done by a human on that level is incredibly overcome by what is able to be done by technology. Yeah. So the difference between not having it and just relying on the human eye of the audience and the 3 judges on a 4-sided ring, which is its own bit of lunacy.
Yeah. Don't.
Because I guess the 4th side doesn't count. Like, what's happening? You do the best you can with what you have at the time. And until now, we didn't have better. But we do now. So there's no excuse not to do the best. The fighters are in there doing their best. They're facing the best. Why not give them the best? The audience is paying top dollar for these fights. They're invested in these careers. These guys are absolutely writing their names and etching their names in the history of the sport forever and ever. These fights that happen never, ever happen again. These are not leagues. These are not scheduled seasons. These are one shot only. Even if you fight the same guy 3 times, it's 3 different fights in 3 different situations with 3 different atmospheres on 3 different nights. You got 2 different guys going in the ring at 2 different stages of life. Yeah. So that fight that happens, it only ever happens once. Let's get it right. Yeah. We have the opportunity finally to get it right. It's unacceptable to get it wrong.
Not just for the fighters though, but for the audience as well. It impacts everybody who watches that fight.
That's what I'm saying. There's no level at which boxing is not affected when you get it wrong.
Yeah.
So let's put absolutely every effort and every bit of technology, every piece of the machine that we have to get it correct on the night. Yeah. And right now, Jabber is the most significant, newest bit of that machine that we have of technology as a whole to get us to that place. It's not the entire thing. We need to build off of this, but this is such a significant step forward that we finally have a solid foundation on which to build. So we could build quickly if this foundation becomes the standard across the sport. So that's, my mission right now, to get us to that level where there are no boxing events that you see on television that don't have this technology. I'm always pursuing my journalism in boxing. I am always looking at a new way to bring the fight inside the people that I speak to to the public because it benefits us all to understand what we've been through as a people.
Yeah.
And the guy that I talked to from Ireland versus the guy I talked to from the Philippines versus the guy I talked to from the Ukraine versus the guy I talked to from Germany, who made none of them speak the same language, but all have a common experience. They've overcome adversity first inside themselves and then potentially externally in a way that we can all benefit from understanding how they attacked it, what they did when all the chips were down, they had to persevere, and what it is like in that moment of truth. Because they say that the boxing ring will expose all lies.
Yeah.
That's that moment of truth. We all have those moments of truth in our life, that time that comes when you have to be who you think you are.
Yeah.
And so I want to hear how you got there and how you overcame and how you became that. And I want to bring to the public as many stories about the individuals who have succeeded in that moment, and even some who didn't, but understand that they get another crack at it as long as they're taking breath on this planet. You get another shot.
Yeah.
I want to hear those stories too. And so that is why I get up every morning, grab a mic, and try to get at it.
Yeah.
So for that, I'm going to pursue a second season of Till This Day.
Yeah.
That will give me an opportunity to speak to people outside the sport of boxing and in my own way transcend boxing journalism and make it a broader, more comprehensive package of voices and experiences that I can present to a global audience. So that's how I expand beyond my comfort zone and my ultimate passion for a specific sport and make that relative to the rest of the world and show how what I love about boxing is inside of all of us.
Yeah.
And bringing that to the world, I think, is another primary focus of my mission. So next season of Till This Day will be coming at you shortly.
Okay. Right, we're coming near to the end. We're going to have a few favourites. Favourite food?
Thanksgiving dinner. Now, I don't know what that means in all parts of the world because it's a very American tradition.
Christmas dinner.
Thanksgiving dinner in America, for me, is my mother making, she actually likes Cornish hen over turkey, which I enjoy. Dressing, which some people call stuffing. Mashed potatoes. Super delicious. Can't do it without the potatoes. Mac and cheese. I like canned cranberry sauce. Understand me. Now, I don't want the berries. I don't want the natural cranberry sauce. I want a... And then when it comes out with the ridges on it, you got to cut it. Yeah, I want that cranberry sauce. You understand?
Okay.
My mother makes a litany of pies. I'll take any of them.
Yeah.
Peach cobbler is my favorite. I got to get her to really that's a special thing that I got to get her to make. So peach cobbler is always a favorite. But yeah, anything my mom puts on the dessert table is going to slap.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Thanksgiving dinner in my house. That's
okay. We're going to your house for Thanksgiving then.
Yeah.
Favorite film?
The Godfather 2 is the best film ever made. This is not even about favorite, right? I'm taking you. I always want people to understand that there's a difference between your favorite and the best. A lot of people get confused because they think their favorite automatically means that's the best. It's not true. The Godfather 2 is the best film ever made. You know, my favorite film might be is Beverly Hills Cop. My favorite film. The Blues Brothers, favorite film. Dumb and Dumber, my favorite film.
Yeah.
Like those three.
I see where you're coming from. You could have 1,000 favorites.
Yeah, of course, The Godfather 2 is one of my favorite films. Depending on what mood I'm in, I got a favorite. I got a collection of favorite films, but there's only one best film. That is The Godfather 2. It's a sequel. It's a prequel. It's its own standalone movie. It's a foreign film. It's a domestic film. Yeah. You got De Niro, Pacino, James Caan.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, man. The list goes on and on. I don't even mean any disrespect to the rest of the cast because I could really just go down the list of the cast
and name
every single individual.
Yeah.
And that would be the only real way to even highlight anybody because they're all incredible. Marlon Brando. I didn't even mention Brando. Like that's how many people are in this film that are wild. So yeah, I will have this debate with anybody. You didn't even want to debate me about this, but I tried to draw you in. I was like daring you to say something else. So yeah. Now with those other favorites that I listed, I will tell you because none of them are really like my favorite film. Those are all favorites, right?
Yeah.
Scarface is my favorite film. This is, again, because of the internal fight that Tony Montana is struggling with throughout the film. You see him, like, everyone thinks of Scarface as really, like, just the fourth quarter of the film. Once the world is his and he's a big drug dealer and the guns and the dope and the, you know, all of this kind of stuff is what people really think of when they think of Scarface. But the story of this man who arrives in Florida during the revolution in Cuba and is in an internment camp and elevates from there to having the world be his and realizing that all that goes with the entire world, that's what you don't want the whole world. You think you do.
Yeah,
but if you get the whole world,
really
you get everything in it. That's one of the lines from the movie.
Yeah. And everything
I want
in
the
it.
world, Chico, and everything in
it.
And that was the curse, that he got everything in it. And then in the final moment when he got a crisis of conscience, when he wouldn't blow up the guy and his wife and his kids, right?
Yeah.
That is when he realized that he wasn't willing to do everything. And if he had done that, he survives the end of the movie. The reason he gets killed in the end is because he doesn't perform that act.
Yeah.
We found the line that Tony Montana won't cross, right?
Yeah.
Because he's actually not just a murderous villain guy. He's just somebody who persevered through all adversity to get what he believed was his, which was success.
Yeah.
Which was, he did it for his mom. He did it for his sister.
His family back in Cuba.
Yeah, he's a political refugee from Cuba.
Yeah.
And I want what the president, Jimmy Carter, says. You know? I want my fucking human rights.
Yeah. Human rights.
Yeah. It's an incredible film. And so even the poster of the film is a negative image, which what I mean is it's like you don't even realize the genius of the poster. So if you don't see it or haven't Googled it yet, which you should have done, you can just see it right there.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
So
that's the gun, that's his hand, there's the handkerchief, but it's a negative image, which shows you like the two sides of Tony, right? Like it's this thing that became real and present from out of darkness, which is why I believe the poster looks the way it does, why it's a negative image. You know, it's like it is the contrast between these two things. So you got to see the hero and the villain in the guy.
Yeah, I never thought of that.
Yeah,
good look. Okay, the only favourite on here.
What's happening? Okay.
The only favourite on here, what is not a D, what is not an F, sorry, is a D. Favourite destination.
An F and a D. I'm going to let that slide. I am a very juvenile person, so when you say F and D, I'm not going to just not chuckle. But I also forgot the question because I am a very silly person.
Oh, we're going to go to S and D again. Right. Favourite destination?
Ireland.
Well, okay.
The whole of the Republic.
Right. So we got to Galway and Mayo.
By the way, as I sit in England, I am part of the resistance. I do not believe that Ireland should be anything but its own republic.
Yes, I'm loving this.
Yes.
Ireland, yeah?
Yeah.
Let's go back to the Fs. Now, this is going to be a bit of a swimming pool. Favourite fight?
Okay.
Now, as your films, we can have a lot of favourite fights.
Yeah. Triple G Canelo 2.
What a fight.
But
I'm going to ask you now. Who do you think won the first one?
Triple G. This is what
Who do you think won the second one?
But it at best could have been a draw. But if I had to pick, which you shouldn't have to do, it would be, I would say Triple G edged it, but I could see that fight as a draw. I would accept it as a draw.
I am so pleased. I am so
But
pleased.
imagine if they had gotten it right. Triple G wins the first fight.
Yeah.
Second fight's a draw.
Yeah.
Triple G, that means he retains the championship.
Retains the
Still champion. Then we definitely get the third fight much quicker. That fight's an imminent fight if he takes it at all. And who knows what happens in the third fight, because we can't glean anything from the actual third fight. It took so long to happen, so many things happened and transpired in between that I don't take anything from that as far as what the trilogy could or should have been. Yeah. So the trajectory of Triple G's career from having lost on the cards, a fight that I believe he certainly won in the first fight, changed the trajectory of both guys' careers forever.
Yeah.
Like, I don't believe we ever will, well, I know we won't because of time wins all battles, see the career that Triple G could have had.
Yeah, that's right.
Had he gotten the correct decision on the night, first time out. And I don't think, in fact, that we would have seen necessarily that different a level of competition from Canelo. I think he's still beating guys in different weight classes, but now these two guys are rivals forever.
Yeah.
And maybe Canelo goes up a weight class and starts to dominate at 68, leaves Triple G to 60. It changes the whole landscape of what happens after the fact. Doesn't mean Canelo isn't a dominant fighter. Doesn't mean Canelo's not still a Hall of Famer, but it means that Triple G's now in that conversation, and we just don't know what could have been. I think we were denied Triple G's future, as more importantly, Triple G was denied his future by getting that one decision wrong.
Yeah, definitely. Now, I think I already know the answer to this, but I'm going to put it there. Favorite fighter?
You think you know the answer to that one?
I think I do. I'm going Manny Pacquiao.
Sugar Ray Leonard.
I can see that.
Sugar Ray Leonard.
I love Ray. But
you say favorite fighter. Now, here, the thing about Sugar Ray Leonard, you know, I obviously wasn't covering it. Yeah, but all the things. And then I know the guy. Like, you know, we've become friends over the years, and I've encountered him on multiple occasions. And, I mean, just talk about the ambassador of the sport, man. Like, he's a very understated guy, very humble, very clever, funny. He's still, of course, got all of his wits and charm. He's been through it all. I mean, that guy, I just like that guy.
Yeah.
He's such a great guy. And then the incredible talent, the fucking nights that he gave us in the sport are like, come on, my guy. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't say enough about Sugar Ray Leonard for me. And
people
don't say enough about Sugar Ray Leonard.
Yeah, he was brilliant. He's brilliant. But do you think he beat Hagler?
Listen, man. Let's just start saying things that are, you know.
It's a question.
We're giving Sugar Ray Leonard his flowers.
Okay.
The thing about it is that...
I'm not asked because Marvin's my guy.
Listen, Marvin Hagler was the victim of a very stacked deck. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
He did not get a fair shake. It was his career, I think.
Yeah, his whole career.
I don't like the Leonard Hagler fight because of when it happened. Right?
Yeah.
I love Marvin Hagler's approach to that. Just kind of, he's always had that grit, and he knew he wasn't getting a fair shake, and he was always like, I think, the blue collar fighter.
Yeah,
you know, and I relate to that, like, kind of bit of just like, you're keeping me stuck in this spot. And it wasn't.
You got me riveted. I can't move.
Yeah, it's just like, you know, that is something that I relate to, and I love that guy. I get it. I feel for the kind of frustration that he had to live with day in and day out. So, you know, I don't like to comment on that fight because it's also kind of like it's sad to me because it's the best that we will have ever gotten in regards to Leonard Hagler, because it's the only time they've done it. But what we could have and should have gotten, we never will get.
Yeah.
And that is down to what we spoke about, what Riyadh season is doing right now in boxing. and making these fights happen.
Yeah.
This
When
is
they
not
should have.
it's not the advent necessarily of the Mayweather effect, which people like to, make him the villain of it. This was happening as far back as Hagler Hearn.
Yeah.
Like, you have to realize that if the fight doesn't happen, when the fight is at its zenith, when both guys are in their prime, when that story is meant to come to its conclusion, or at least that chapter is meant to be written, then you never get it. Like that experiment, which I like to call fights because that's what the science is in the sweet science. You got two elements for the first time coming together in the moment, in the composition that they are on that night. We will never know what that composition and those elements would have been on a different night. Even if it was one night before or one night after, it would be different.
Yeah.
So we know when we wanted and needed and should have gotten Hagler Hearns, we'll never know what that experiment would have wrought. And so when we did get it, I just don't believe it met nearly the standard of what it could have and should have been. It was more entertainment, I think, and more of a spectacle than anything it would have been in regards to a competitive athletic boxing competition that it would have been early on. So Leonard, knowing that, was the showman.
Yeah.
Leonard kind of did to Hagler in a way what he did to Duran, in that he frustrated a frustrated guy. That Hagler was there to have a gritty boxing match, and Leonard was there to put on a show. And Leonard knew the trappings of the show. He was smart in there, and he outsmarted Hagler in the way he did the fight. He knew how to win it. And
over 12 rounds, not 15.
Yeah. I mean, Leonard's fucking brilliant. So so to that sense, he won the fight using more elements than these two hands. He figured out how to expand his weapons.
Yeah.
And he used weapons that Hagler didn't even know were in the fight.
Yeah, that's that is a brilliant analogy. I'm going to put one more there because I forgot this. I didn't forget it. Oakland, what's your favourite music?
My favorite music is classic rock.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah. I've been to 17 Rolling Stones concerts. Oh, yeah. Led Zeppelin's the greatest rock and roll band of all time.
Okay.
Bar none. Mind you, that is because all rock and roll is rooted in the blues. And the blues is the greatest expression of music I've ever experienced. Yeah. So what I love about rock and rolls is that the heart of it is the blues. But I love electric guitar. I love the way that white people are always so fucking happy even when they're sad.
So you're not onto Motown or the Teddy P's?
Listen, Sam Cooke is the greatest crooner to ever live, right? I listen to all types
because
of music.
Oakland is a very soul. People there.
Yeah, but I am from the place, but I'm not of any place. I am a global man, and if you're asking what I'm listening to, what I'm turning on in the morning when I am putting the circuits together to go have my day.
Yeah.
It's classic rock, baby.
Yeah,
I might listen to a variety of other things. Like, don't get me wrong, I understand that the music that is presented by really all genres, not any specific genre of music that I can't appreciate.
Yeah.
And I have favorites in most, but my favorite genre overall, where I can just turn on a station that is only playing this genre of music and not turn it off all day, that's classic rock.
Yeah, I got you. Radio Rahim, thank you so much for letting us into your life.
Yes.
Really appreciate today.
Yes. I'm expecting that season finale in the Irish Republic.
In the Irish Republic. Okay. You've heard that on film now. We're going.
Yeah, we're going. We're going. Yes.
My guy.
I'm fucking unifying Ireland, because this is it's a funny thing, man. Like, whenever I meet Irish people, I feel like there's a camaraderie there. There's like some kind of like element, and I got to figure out what it is, which is why I'm winding you up and constantly talking about it, because I want to get there and figure out what this connection is from. I won't even say obviously. It just so happens that I'm not Irish, but somewhere in there, somewhere in these roots, somewhere down the line, something is very, very tangible to me. Like I can touch it, that I am connected to these people. I've never not felt that when I was in an environment, like even Wildcard Boxing Gym, very much a place where Irish people would come and felt like, Freddie Roach, even, has got that Irish
Roach
moniker.
is an Irish name.
It's an Irish name. I don't know that Freddie Roach actually is Irish,
yeah,
but he does carry that like tradition. And, so early days, I've met so many people from Ireland in Wildcard Boxing Gym, befriended so many Irish people, and it was just like absolute love at first sight. Yeah. We got on straight away. There was never like a gap in culture that you would think. Like you say, oh yeah, but Oakland, it's this, it's that, the culture, the black, the white, the American, United Kingdom, and the European, and you would think that there couldn't be more distance between our experiences, but for some reason, lined up perfectly. Similar. There's symmetry there.
Yeah.
So I got to go find out what that thing is that tethers me to Irish people.
We're gonna
so we're gonna go find it.
But
the main thing is, we ain't swearing allegiance to the king or the queen. That's something that we agree on in Oakland.
We don't hear either.
That's right.
Oh, Rahim, that was brilliant.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, man.
Appreciate it.
That was so cool.
Love it,